Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, what a game. This was a huge game for the Digimon franchise. The original on the PS Vita and PS4 sold 800,000 copies. Its sequel and compilation game furthered that number to 1.5 million. Yes, this isn't necessarily monster sales in the tens of millions, but it was enough to put Digimon games on the map again in North America and Europe. It may not be my personal favorite game in the franchise, but it is absolutely a huge reason why Digimon is gaining relevance again. It may be the #1 reason, so let's get into why. Despite being released in 2015, Cyber Sleuth's importance can be traced back all the way to 2006 when Digimon Story for the Nintendo DS was released. Here in North America, you may know it by Digimon World DS. Digimon games were in a slump before this time, with games being released during the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox generation selling super poorly. Back in the PS1 games, Digimon was doing respectably. Like, Digimon World 1 actually sold 1 million copies, Digimon World 2 sold about 600,000, with Digimon World 3 not too far behind it. I think one reason why Digimon games failed after this is because Bandai just did not have a clear idea of what they wanted to do with the Digimon name. Just think about it. Digimon World 1 was a V-Pet simulator. Digimon World 2 was a dungeon crawler. Digimon World 3 was a 1v1 more traditional JRPG. Wanna know what Digimon World 4 was? A fucking hack and slash that was goddamn terrible. Spin-off games were also released, a decent amount of them fighting games, but once in a while you get the weird-ass ones like Digimon Racing 2. The point is, Digimon lacked consistency and an identity. Digimon World DS, or Digimon Story, completely changed that. Digimon World DS stuck to the turn-based gameplay. It kind of scrapped what Digimon World 2 did with the whole dungeon crawling bullshit, and it kind of just took the battling aspect. Instead of only having the 1v1 battles like say in Digimon World 3, this was expanded upon that the player could have 3 and several in reserve. Due to the strong sales of Digimon World DS, it spawned a decently successful sequel, Digimon World Dawn and Dusk, or in Japan, it's known as Digimon Story Sunburst and Moonlight. This was released in 2007. But then, oh god, then it happened. Digimon World Championship was released in 2008. I personally haven't played it, but this is the single most thing to blame for Digimon games disappearing in the West. It simply sold like ass, so much so that the other 2 Digimon Story follow-up games only stayed in Japan despite having decent success in the US with Digimon World DS and Dawn and Dusk. After that, a pair of Digimon games released for the PSP in 2012 and 13. They were called Digimon World Redigitize and Digimon Adventure respectively. Digimon World Redigitize received an enhanced port on the 3DS called Digimon World Redigitize Decode in 2013. All 3 of these games never left Japan. Between these 3 releases, and not to mention the other 2 story games, it was becoming clear that Digimon games just weren't coming out of Japan anymore. Many disgruntled fans started to sign a petition called Operation Decoded in 2013. The signatures piled up, enough so that Namco Bandai responded with this tweet. It says, "A lot of love for Digimon. Interesting stuff." 3 other Namco Bandai employees also responded to this petition, which had over 20,000 signatures at that point in time. The fact that this caught Namco Bandai's attention was absolutely huge, and it was a necessary first step to show the company that Digimon games could exceed greatly outside of Japan. For the next while, it seemed that Namco's response was really the only outcome of the petition. In December of 2013, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth was announced for Japan. In 2014, the West actually received a Digimon game. It was the mediocre Digimon All-Star Rumble. It was first shown off in July 2013 and was slated for release in November of that same year. It was released to pretty mixed and negative reviews, but the sales were actually somewhat okay. Basically, this was Namco's tactic to gauge Digimon's interest level in the West. I personally hate this tactic. Many Digimon fans probably looked at this as a slap to the face. They were basically saying, hey, you want a Digimon game? Buy the shitty one and you may get Cyber Sleuth. Isn't that so kind of us? This also happened to poor Chibi Robo, and I don't think it really worked out for him. In June of 2015, Amazon Canada listed Digimon World Cyber Sleuth for the PS4. This was later proven to be somewhat true, as the title would actually end up being Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, like it was in Japan, and it would also release for both the PS4 and PS Vita in the West. The day finally came. It was February 2nd, 2016, and Digimon blasted into the West again with a pretty solid game. I personally enjoyed this one a decent bit. I'd give it a solid 5 out of 7. But is this it? What was to come after this? Did this sell poorly? Would Digimon actually be revived? Was this just a one and done? It was clear that Namco Bandai was giving this franchise a chance finally, but to put it lightly, it could have used more care. The localization effort was just kind of decent, as there are mistakes everywhere. But listen, a Digimon game's coming out to the US, damn it, I'm happy. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth sold well above Namco's expectations. Let's look at it this way. Digimon World Next Order, a game that is part of a completely different Digimon sub-series, was completely dubbed. That's insane to me because keep in mind, Digimon World Next Order plays like a VPET game, like Digimon World 1, meanwhile Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is a JRPG game. This means that just because the West bought Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, that does not mean they're going to buy Digimon World Next Order as well. Digimon World Next Order was released in 2017, meanwhile the sequel to Cyber Sleuth, Hacker's Memory, was released in 2018 in the West, although only subbed. A compilation of both the Cyber Sleuth games were released for PC and Switch in 2019, called Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Complete Edition. Digimon Survive is also right around the corner, and the phone apps Digimon Lynx and Rio Rise also came out in the US. Outside of the video games, Digimon Adventure Tri, Digimon Last Evolution, and the Digimon VPET 20th Anniversary Edition were all released in the US. All this is after Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth's breakout success. It's unfortunate that some Digimon games never made it outside of Japan officially. Some were translated by the fans, like Digimon Adventure, Digimon World Redigitize, and its enhanced port, Digimon World Redigitize Decode, but Digimon content was basically non-existent here in the US for a while. It's nice to see that the franchise is trying to fire on all cylinders again here in the US. I hope it continues, and I'm very thankful for Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth's existence and success. It was more than just a good game for the Digimon franchise. It was literally a franchise savior.